Welcome back to She Said What, the podcast. Today I am here with a very special guest, Sarah Gale. Welcome to the couch.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you. This has been a long time coming as well. We've been chatting about this episode and about bringing you to my audience, which I just know that everyone's going to be blown away by what we have to talk about today.
Love it.
For those who do not know you, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So my name's Sarah Gale and I'm the founder of Wearing Your Worth. And of Wearing Your Worth, we look at the psychological relationship that you have with your clothes and we use that to inform your style. Background-wise, I spent over 3 decades in the fashion industry, I started in the buying stream and I bought for lots and lots of majors. I ended up as judge on Project Runway Australia for a couple of seasons. I did the startup of the Iconic, and then I had some high-profile senior roles. And at the same time, I've had the last 2.5 decades in personal development as well. And my worlds used to be very separate. It was like under a cloak when I go to work. It's like no one knows there's this other deep side to me. And it is one of the ways so that I survived the fashion industry was by really knowing who I was. And I often say I don't think I would have survived it anyway otherwise. And people are like, and I'm like, I'm not joking.
Yeah, wow.
So over the last decade, though, my two worlds have really combined to come into a deeply transformative way that we can use our clothes to really come home to ourselves.
That's so incredible. We're going to get into Wearing Your Worth in a second, but I want to hear more about the fashion industry. So when you say it was like 2 separate lives you were living, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. I was a single mum at the time and I was a buyer for like lots of the different majors over the time, and also I consulted a lot. And I think what happened was that I felt like I really needed to I had a bit of a guard up. Yep. And so it felt like a very externally focused industry. And we can talk about that later because it still is. But we're talking, I started in the 80s. And the 80s was bigger than big. Yeah, I mean, even the shoulder pads are big. The hair was big, right? Gorgon Greco or whatever his name was, like greed is good. That was the 80s. And a lot of the independent and fashion houses got bought out by big conglomerates. So it was a very ego-driven world. And so I guess what happened is I went in and I almost felt like if I showed people this very sensitive side and this part that I had an out-of-body experience at 6 years old. I've always been very internally directed. And it was almost like I didn't want to be found out and I wanted to be accepted as everyone else. But the crazy part was, Caitlin, that I would use all my internal intuitive gifts to choose the styles that I'd put in the store. And sometimes I had no foundation of it. It's like, I'll have 1,000 of those. But it just it felt right. And they just fly out the door and I was like, I'm on to something.
I have no idea why, but you need to order 1,000 of these jackets.
Absolutely. And I'd be given millions of dollars. Like, here's your budget. It's like, okay, let's go for it. And occasionally this part of me would start to come out. And, depending on who I was working with, I had an assistant who's now kinesiology, bless her cotton socks. But she, we would clean our auras to begin with. We would clean the aura of the office. And anyone who came, it's like, you're feeling a bit dirty. And so, once it got to the early 2000s, I started to kind of, play with it a bit. And I've been a daily meditator since I was, it's 30 years now that I've been a daily meditator for. And I was a student of A Course in Miracles for, years and years and years. I've just started the lessons again for the 4th time. And I just, it actually felt really compartmentalized, my life. And I think, it wasn't comfortable because of that. But I can now see where it so served me. Because if I hadn't been compartmentalized, would I have come to the new body of work that really brings us in as a whole? Probably not. Yeah.
So it was an integral part of your journey, having to keep those lives separate but also using like your intuition and your like other side into your real job, let's call it.
100%. And if I give you an example of that as well, I often laugh when I say this, but so intuitively I've always been really, really tuned in and just assumed everyone was. And then as I got older, I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah.
We've all got it exactly the same. It just depends how much we exercise that.
Yeah.
And I remember being on Project Runway, Australia, and I'd be sitting on the seats at the end when all the designers are out on the runway. And I kept hearing these random questions in my mind. And I'm like, what is that? And then I would hear the host come out with a question and think, what's going on here? And anyway, and she was, more informed than we were. We were rogue, Jason and I. We were just allowed to say what we wanted. But I kept, and we didn't know any background of anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I said to this voice inside, if you want me to ask it, you have to give it to me twice. So the voice started to give it to me twice. And so then I'd come out with this completely random question to a designer, and it would just be like this whole story would unfold. And I remember one day the producers coming down the hallway after we'd done a shoot, and they said, we call you the freak. And I'm like, okay, I've been called worse, but
Thank you.
give me the freak. And they said, we're talking, because they're way in another room somewhere, and they said, we'll be talking about a story that really needs to unfold as we're watching everyone, and, we need a question about this or that, and next thing it would spit out of your mouth. It was like, I knew exactly what was going on, but it was just it was those kind of things that I used, but so secretly. Because back in those days, personal development wasn't like it was now. There was no Instagram, there was no social media, and you really ended up almost in back alleys, at little talks somewhere, and the talks would really find you more than anything. So past life retreats, or, I remember going on a retreat with a Palladian, and, lots of things where people, if I told them what I was doing, they would have thought I was completely crackers. Whereas these days, it's like, oh, yeah, I was at that retreat too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is so incredible. So that brings us into, I guess, wearing your worth. Like, how did that come about? How did that come through you, I guess?
Yeah, it did. It did. That's a really good way of putting it. It did come through me. It was basically, I started to wake up in the middle of the night.
As all good stories.
You just a really normal answer. But at the time, I was in a general manager role for a global fashion retailer, and so my days were really busy. And I think that happens, right? When my days are busy, I get a lot during the night, and I sometimes can't sleep because there's a lot going on inside. And so I was woken up one evening at about 1:30, and I started to get these, what I can only describe as downloads about the relationship that we have with our clothes and how it's undermining our relationship with ourselves. And I'm like, hang on a minute, what is that? And so I made a deal with this voice that, I know, I'm always making deals.
Always making deals.
It's probably my bio background.
Yeah.
Wheeling and dealing.
Negotiate,
yeah. And I was always known as a really firm but fair negotiator. So, probably, the voice inside is like, oh, here she goes again. Anyway, and I made a deal. If you want me to do something with this, give it to me really clearly. Because I'd had notions of it about 5 years previously, and I got into a girlfriend's wardrobe, and we went through a process that I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it was about her. I actually took a film crew in, as you do. Because I was just like, I just heard it inside. It's like, there's something here. Yeah. But then after I'd done that, and it was a really powerful, but I then dropped it and I went back to full-time roles and things like that. So anyway, coming back to this voice. So then I used to get woken up every night, or most nights, I should say, for about 18 months with this download about the relationship that we have with our clothes. And then bit by bit, it started to build, and I would just write down what it was. And then I got given a process, and I'm like, what is this? And it was so enthralling. Have you ever had one of those times where you just know truth is within you?
Yeah.
And you know that the more that you say no to it, the more uncomfortable you become.
Yeah.
You know that, don't
Yeah,
you? I can
I know
see
that
by the look on your
feeling.
face. And so I leave my full-time role. Honestly.
There's a voice talking to me in my sleep. I cannot do my job anymore.
I have to go.
Yeah.
I know. It was really like, okay, you're really going to do this, aren't you? And I was doing a coaching accreditation at the time, and I thought, right, I love leadership. Always love leadership. I'll do that, and I'll do this. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I leave, and then anyone, literally any woman who said anything, because I talked about it all the time, and anyone who showed any kind of inclination to a vulnerability in their wardrobe and some kind of, connection to or desire to connect with themselves, I'm like, can I come into your wardrobe? And so I just started to go in to people's wardrobes and do as I was told. And there would be times where I'd be in there, and what we would start to do would be to unpack their relationship with their wardrobe. And what I started to see was that the wardrobe's like a metaphor. The relationship that you have with your wardrobe is the same as the relationship that you have with your life. And I was like, oh my God, like, whoa. And the power of it. And these women were just like, that was so powerful. And then we would find these strands that, and these themes in their wardrobes. And to begin with, I didn't understand what they were. So I would be like helping them to style outfits that moved them away from the programming and the patterning and the old stories that they'd been telling themselves. But I hadn't yet got to the style essences. It was like I was asked to perfect that first. And so I was like, okay.
Let's go there.
Let's go there.
Can you tell us like some examples of patterns and stories that people might find? For anyone listening going like, oh, maybe that's me, maybe that's not. What did you typically come across? What do you come across?
Yeah, so let's say early on I remember one style, one was around, so the word sexy is like, it's a really triggering word for so many people, and why wouldn't it be? We live in a culture, in a patriarchal culture, that which objectifies women's bodies. And sexy is one of those words that has people very externally focused and seeing themselves through a lens of others rather than really knowing what true sexy is. And to me, true sexy is like it connects in with our second chakra. It's, originally we had sex to procreate, right? It's our power of creation. So in that, it's, I remember, I think it was one of the first women I went into, and she had completely buttoned down on her style, like she was hiding. And she was expressing her feminine in very, very safe ways. Now, nothing wrong with this. And anything I say, if it's your own truth, awesome. But if it's a mask or if it's a guard, let's get under that.
Let's unravel that.
And she had been around 14 years old. She'd been out shopping with a family member, come back. She'd been to Sports Girl. She'd bought these crop tops and some little shorts, and she was in her bedroom trying them on. And she put them on, and then her dad came in and said, you need to come and help. It was at work, they owned a restaurant, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I have to change. And he was like, there's no time, you have to come now. So she went in this outfit, and that night someone said to her, you look like a, can I swear on this?
Yeah, go for it.
You look like a slut. Now that embedded in this 14-year-old, she felt shame, right? And it absolutely just went through her entire being. And she didn't remember that story until we got into the wardrobe. And when we got into it and we started to unravel what she was really hiding, there was this, she was dressing in really preppy clothes, really comfortable clothes, and things that hid anything that had to do with her feminine body.
Wow.
And it was just, so that was one of the first pieces I came across, and I was like, okay, there's something in here. Yeah. So many people, so women in particular, and I mainly work with women, although I have worked with a few men and they're fascinating to do, different, but some of the other patterns, so sexy is one, elegant is another. Oh my gosh, like it's almost like elegant. So there are 6 different style essence groups, which I don't tend to share. I have got a book coming out, but I don't tend to share purely because what happens is people go to grasp on to something of those groups without deprogramming first. So their ego then grabs onto the group that they think will bring them the most, how will I put this? They just play into their patterns.
Yeah.
It's the best way of putting it.
Like this is my style essence or this is my style essence. But
Yes.
It's like if you actually don't know what they are, you can't, there's nothing to grab onto.
There's nothing to grab onto, and that's the best way to start, right? Because we want to see what hides it. So I remember in Elegant, there was a woman who, so can I just explain what style essences are?
Please,
because we haven't done that.
Yeah.
So style essences, this is what I worked out. Once I started to go through people's wardrobe and started to see the programming and patterning like I talked about with that first woman, then I was given the next piece and it was like, there's a formula. And this only came out when I started to see the similarities that started to appear in the words that my clients would use. And I'm like, what's that? And as I started to feed back, when I would say to them, how do you feel in what you wear? And they would start to rattle off these words. And some words were absolute consistencies. And they would actually look and go, I can't believe I just said that word. It's like, right, there's something here. And our style essences, so we each have 3 style essences. Yep. Why they're 3? I have no idea why they're 3.
Couldn't tell you.
3. It's a sacred number, 3, so maybe that's why. And our style essences are 3 sensory creative characteristics that inform our style. So my style essence is grace. So there's like an effortless elegance to everything I wear. There's sexy, which sexy for me, the air loves to kiss my skin. So I've always got some kind of skin somewhere, but it's that very, I feel sexy. It's like that powerful creatress inside just turns on. Yeah. And my last one is a uniquely bold. So, and that bold, there's always something, like it might be the color of my nail polish. It might be the way I've juxtaposed my outfit between something really dressy and something really casual. It feels bold for me. So the most important thing about your style essences is it's how you feel in your clothes. And once you find those 3 style essences, it's like kaboom. It's like all of a sudden you become internally referenced about what to wear. You feel so alive in your skin. The most common thing I hear from clients, unprompted, is I've never felt so alive, so myself in my skin before. And it's just such a contrast to the way that people currently get dressed, which is all externally focused about what they need to look like, how they need to fit in, how they need to follow the trends, how they get so programmed by the ridiculous beauty standards that are out in our culture at the moment. And most of the trends and the way that we go about informing women of what they need to look like are there for someone else's commercial gain. They're not about you and your well-being, and they're not about you really expressing your true power and beauty. Because when you do, when you take that out into the world, we're talking about freaking really powerful women from the inside out. And that's what our style essences do. They express who we really are congruently from the inside of who we are to the outside. And when we put that in our clothing, our whole energy frequency levels up to our truth. And in that truth, there is no self-judgment. Our whole body talk just starts to diminish because in that frequency, it's simply not there. And in that frequency, we get into tap into our intuition, our power, our sense of ourself, our worth. and it's a whole new ball game.
Oh, ugh. The way that you're explaining that just makes me so excited because it's not about cuts, colours, all of this. Or like when I first heard about it, that's where my mind went, right? Of like, okay, well, if I've got this shaped body, then I would wear something to accentuate my waist and that's going to make me feel feminine or things like that. But can you explain that part of it? Because it's not anything to do with that, is it?
It's not, and I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad because when I always say to people, if you're looking for someone to tell you you're a triangle dressed like that, it's definitely not me. Because when we talk about your body in a term of shape, that in itself is a dangerous place to be because we turn you into a one-dimensional being.
Oh.
And you're so much more than a one-dimensional or three-dimensional being. And I know your audience will relate to this, we are so much more than that. And our power sits in our fullness, in our wholeness. So when we look to dress about what's going to suit our body and suit our colouring, we are actually putting all of our attention on our external appearance and not realising that our body is a temple of our soul first and foremost. Yep. And when we allow ourselves to really honour that temple by expressing our true beauty, we are so freaking beautiful. It's ridiculous. Show me a woman that's not. Actually, show me a man that's not. Show me a human that's not when they are so attuned to the truth of who they are. And when we really allow ourselves to express our truth, then we end up really being able to stand in our power. Yet when we look at, and when people do colour charts, and I know I won't make a lot of friends saying this, especially to the colour chart people, but it's like that was a stage. The body shape was a stage. In the awareness that we live in now, that is not a stage anymore. Where it's really outdated. Yeah. And so we need to get with the picture that we are a whole person. And when we start to dress like that, that's when we're going to really stand in our power and own our beauty. Because I think owning our beauty for some people is not an easy thing to do.
Have you had a lot of experience with clients with that?
Oh, I can think of one particular client in the US, this woman, oh my God, so beautiful. And she'd been told as a kid, you are not beautiful, you are ugly. So she'd been stripped of any correlation between herself and beauty and also her feminine. So when she decided that she wasn't beauty, she said to me, I never put beautiful and myself in the same sentence. I haven't known how to do that. And the feminine, the same. So she absolutely buttoned down all of her feminine and ended up dressing in very masculine styles and she just couldn't find. She just thought some women are beautiful and I'm not. And so when we went through this session, we did a one-on-one together. And when we went through this session, to begin with, when I said to her, the session will involve a lot of trying on clothes, the look of horror on her face. And being in America, we were doing this over Zoom, which I do a lot over Zoom as well as in person. And she just looked and I said to her, how are you feeling about that? Because I could see she was just like, and she's like, it terrifies me. And I said, it'll be fun, but we'll warm up to it, okay? And she was like, okay. And by the end, this woman was absolutely trouncing around her bedroom in heels she didn't even know were in her wardrobe. And she's singing and she's laughing. She's in her full feminine flow and she's just looking in like, I am so freaking hot. Like it was so beautiful. And, you know, as a follow-up, this same woman connected with me a few weeks ago and said to me, do you know, she explained something that was happening in her workplace. And she said, in the past, I would have gone about it in a very masculine way. And I felt intimidated by these men. in the past, and I would have just come up against them in my masculine. She said, but this time, she said, and it's been since your program, what's happened is I've come into my own feminine and I've looked at what they're saying to me and I've held my ground and I've allowed my feminine to do the talking, but to draw her lines and say, okay, this is what I require. This is my time frame. And if that doesn't happen, this will be my response. Instead of going up and, you know, kind of that same aggressive behavior that men use, and we get drawn into it, into our masculine. And that's not to say that we can't hold assertiveness, because she was really assertive, but she just found a way to do it that didn't feel so combative to her and felt so much more honouring. You know what? They came back and said, yes.
Of course.
Because I always say a woman in her full power is so much more powerful when she's in her feminine power than when she's when she believes her true power is in her masculine.
Can you explain to us a little bit about feminine and masculine in terms of women for anyone that doesn't understand?
Yeah, okay, great. And look, I'm going to suffice this or start this by saying, disclaim really, we're all both.
Yeah.
Yeah? But in the society that we live in, we're told that feminine are soft skills and masculine are hard skills. I even find that quite amusing, to be honest. So feminine is that sense of we have so much feminine power. You go back to even like the Temple of Isis, Mary Magdalene. Like, look at how the literature has made her into this whore and this sinner woman, and how the world's problems started in the Garden of Eden, I think it was. I haven't read the Bible, but I've done reading about the Bible. So there you go. And so we're always told that we need to be, as the feminine, it's like we get to connect into our intuitive gifts. The feminine's very close to this, her true nature, the nature inside. The masculine is very action-oriented, yeah? So very much, and very structured, whereas the feminine flows, yeah? So sometimes, think about the creative process. We start the ideas there, it's like boom, 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 it's like, whoa. And then once we start to follow through that, it goes into chaos. Because it kind of has to, because all the old linear structural thinking has to break down. So any programmed thoughts start to break down to allow this newness and this new ideation to come into form, right? I always say, because most women, when I first see them, their masculine is overriding their feminine, yeah? And it's because we're taught that in the patriarchal society that we live in, or culture, let me call it culture that we live in. And let me just preface this, that the culture that we live in is damaging for women and damaging for men. Yeah, so I'm not going on this whole, like, we need to turn in, we need a matriarchal society. I don't believe in that either. Although I have to say a matriarchal society is not women in power. It's actually equality. Yep, it's collaboration. It's power with rather than power over. Yep. I lost track a bit. I
love it.
I can do that. But with the masculine and feminine, so a lot of women hide their feminine because they've bought into very early on as a cultural stance that males tend to have more power in the things that are recognised as powerful in the world.
Yes.
Yes, money, status, possessions, jobs, blah, blah, blah. And when we're in the workplace, I mean, certainly for me, it was quite obvious that, you know, the masculine power was more revered than the feminine power. So what happens is we learn how to really attune our masculine power so that we can come into a sense of feeling powerful amongst, especially say in the workplace, right? But what that ends up doing is it has us then bring that into the whole of our lives. And when we do that, what we've done is we've unbalanced our masculine and our feminine. So my Sarah Gale golden rule is this. The masculine, so I'm talking internal masculine and feminine here. The masculine is there to hold a container for the feminine, but not to contain her. Yeah. And what that means is that structure is great on some, on some level. Let's hold the goal, let's hold the structure, let's hold the what. And now let the feminine come in and weave her magic. So even if you think about your business, we want the structure around it. What is this? I mean, we're sitting, you've had to organise the podcast. But what we talk about, I mean, we're in total flow here.
I have no idea.
We'll just see what happens, right? What comes out? Who knows? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's the beauty, because that's truth. Now, when I come far too into my masculine, my God, it's a nightmare. I'm a nightmare. I'm a total nightmare. I can't think straight. I can't answer a question. I don't feel.
Because masculine isn't a feeling energy.
No, it's more of a
doing.
thinking and a doing. And there's such credence in that. Like, it's beautiful, but let's not overrun our feminine with that. I always say to people, state first, right? Come into the state and then action from that. So allow yourself the structure to create your create your state. Yeah. And then when we come into the state of real connection on the inside, which is what we're doing when we're dressing in our style essences every day, we're coming back to come into connection and shift our energy to be in the connection with ourselves rather than our energy being externally focused of who I need to be or what I think I need to be on the outside. So we come into connection with ourselves and then let's take action from that place. Because when we do that, it's divinely guided action. And that's so much more powerful.
And something you said to me, I got gifted a session which was absolutely mind-blowing last weekend. And something that really stuck out to me that you said was about, I work from home. Like if I'm recording in the podcast studio or I'm out and about, but I'm typically at home, and the way I dress, most of the time Sarah was like, yeah, like big baggy, like grungy t-shirt, baggy pants, or like workout gear and stuff, which, because I know I've said this or I've heard this before during the COVID times, how everyone got sent to work at home and they went through this big thing of like, just pretend you're going to the office. Do you remember hearing about that, of like, still get up, do your morning things, dress for the day? And in my head, I was like, that sounds so dumb. So I never kind of did it. But then as we were talking about style essences, and we'll get into my session in a little bit as well, but even just that of like, it makes sense for me to get so in tune with who I am, for me to work in my business, even if I'm just sitting at my computer and I'm writing something, or I'm creating content, or I'm getting back to my clients, or I'm in a client session. Why the fuck wouldn't I want to be so in tune with who I am and in my most powerful state? So it's not so much about, okay, I'm going to look nice and I'm going to do my hair and do my makeup so I look nice on the external. It's like I'm dressing nice so I feel that's the only way I can explain it, like a full like connection with who I am.
100%. And I love that. And we did have a chuckle. It was like, okay, how do you feel in that? And maybe that's a great question. How did you feel in your baggy T-shirts and your baggy pants that weren't expressing your style essences? So what's the difference? Now it's been, 5 days or so from your session? Let me ask you.
Oh, how are the turntables?
Yeah. Can I interview for a moment? I'm really curious. Have you worn your style essences each day since then?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the difference been for you?
I'm going to tell you the story about the one I texted you about.
Oh, yes, please.
So we had our session, and to start off, Sarah goes, grab out your 8 to 10 favorite pieces. Grabbing. And there's this cute yellow linen dress that I absolutely love. And in my head, I'm like, okay, my style essences are like comfort, relaxed, coastal, beachy girl. Like in my head, I'm like, this is easy. And I've got this beautiful yellow, real linen dress from Byron Bay. Comes just above my knees, and it's kind of got what kind of neckline? I'm not sure.
I would say it's a very wide scooped, but it's quite high.
Yeah. high,
And
wide scoop.
it's got a slight linear feel to it as well. Like it's not a real scoop. It's a very gentle scoop.
Soft.
So, yeah.
So I grabbed out one of my favorite dresses. And Sarah's like, okay, put it on. And anyway, we'll get into my session in a sec. But what happened was it turns out this dress wasn't in my style essences. And we'll explain a little bit why. But I always wear this to the beach because I go, I'm just going to chuck it on and I'm just walking down 5 minutes. Then I take it off and I'm in my bikini. And I went to the beach the other day. Instead of chucking on my classic yellow dress, I put on an outfit that was aligned with my style essences, which was some denim shorts and a cute crop and a shirt. And I'm like going 5 minutes down the road and I kid you not, I'm at the beach that I have gone to every day for the past year probably in summer, minding my own business, reading Onyx Storm that just came out, and this man comes up to me and he starts having a conversation with me. He tells me he likes my cap. He tells me he likes my tattoos. He's starting a conversation. He's like, where are you from? What do you do? Rah, 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 rah. Can I grab your number? I would love to take you to the tennis. Have you ever been? And I was like, I never get asked out by strangers. And I was like, yes, let's go. Anyway, I texted you like straight away because I was like, this is absolutely crazy. Can you explain that?
I can so explain that. And I just want to say I so loved receiving that text. And I could show you so many texts and messages from clients within a few days of having their session. They're like, what's going on? People are crossing the road to come over to say, I don't know what it is about you, but you look and feel amazing. Like I had a woman who someone chased around the supermarket to say, you just are shining. What's going on? Like it's quite extraordinary, right?
Yeah.
And let's just be clear. You are using what was already in your wardrobe.
Yes, I had not purchased anything else.
Yes, and it's the same with these other clients. So what's happening is when you dress in your essences, so your yellow dress was not in your essences. Yep, it was a story. So it was coming from your head and you had attached some patterns to this. And that's why we have to get to the programming and the patterning before we get to the essences. Because otherwise, and you said this is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But once we actually got it out, when you knew your style essences, it was like, oh, that dress just doesn't feel it, right?
And I was like, I hate this dress now.
Yeah, you were used to the feeling of mediocre in how you felt. You didn't know what it really felt like to feel fully alive in your clothes, yeah? And so what happened was when you put those style essences on, your whole energy shifted.
Yeah, I remember you saying my voice changed, my body language shifted.
Everything, the tone, like it was just like this. I should have filmed that one. But what happened, so when you were in that outfit going to the beach, what you're doing is you are exuding an energy that is clear. There are no kinks in that energy. And that's why you feel so alive. But imagine if you could see, if we're all, evolved beings and we saw people as these light beings as we are, what you're picking up on is this light that is just radiating from you. And that's the difference. So instead of dressing for how you look, we dress to really connect you with you, because not only do you look like extraordinary, because you can't not. You are 1 in 8 billion people, right? You are the only one with your energetic frequency in 8 billion people on this planet. Now, that energy has never been there before, will never be there after. It's a once off. Does it or does it not make sense that if you've got your own energy vibration, why would you not have your own formula of your true self-expression to express and embody in your clothes that then correlated with the energy inside, that then allows your energy to radiate out into this world so that it is felt by others as well and impacts others. It's like, so that's what happened. And I've heard it over and over and over. It always happens. It's a classic. The stories are different.
Yeah.
They're my favourite stories. I have to add a few more to the
He
book.
was talking to me and in my head, I'm already texting you. As he's asking me, I'm like, I need to tell Sarah. Because this is barbaric. Like, it was crazy. And even because I wasn't wearing the outfit still. Like you said, it was the energy of how I felt coming to the beach in it.
Well, you just brought up such a great piece. I get so freaking
Like I was
excited.
like wet from the ocean, like in my bikini with my hat, reading my book like a little nerd.
100%. So what happens think about it, every single morning, right? When we get dressed, not in our style essences, we're doing that because we're connecting into external patterning that is programming from the culture that we live in that we don't even know we're programmed in, right? The super sneaky voices that says to us, no, that really feels like me. Like your yellow dress, this really feels like me.
This is my favourite dress. This is my dress.
Hands down.
Yep.
Hands down. Okay, let's put it on. And what happens though is that you haven't found your true power to take out into the world when you're living underneath the rock of your programming and patterning. So every morning when you do that, no wonder it's a struggle to really live in your full power or to really own your full power and take those enormous steps that you're hearing, right? Or to hold true to yourself in a conversation, yeah? Or to be able to really acknowledge and care and rest when it's required, to listen and honour self. Because whoops, sorry, I keep banging this microphone. If there's a bit of a, it's just what I'm doing. But when we come in and we dress like you did the other day, fully in your style essences, not concerned with how anyone else is going to see you, because that's in a different vibration. But you shine in a way that you've never shined before in your yellow dress, right? You shine in this way. What happens is you've embedded that into your energy field. And so, yes, it's in your field. So that's probably the long and short of it. Oh my God.
It absolutely blew my mind. And when we did the session as well, I didn't really think this through, but I didn't have any makeup on and my hair was 3 days of oil and sweat because I put an oil treatment in it, right? Because I didn't think. I wasn't like, oh, I'll probably need to have my hair nice or anything, which turned out to be an absolute blessing because as I was trying on these outfits, and again, I didn't go shopping. This was all things that I already had in my wardrobe that we were working with. And I was pulling out these outfits and I was trying things on. I had sweaty oil bun hair, absolutely no makeup on. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so powerful. So it wasn't because I was all dolled up and now the outfit looks nice. It was like, this is clothes I already had in my wardrobe that I haven't just put together this way or I haven't rolled up a sleeve a certain way. It was like tiny little things that made all the difference. That absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And you made such a good point. And I'd never seen that before, right? In the sense of I'd never made that connection because most people don't show up to a session 3 days.
Sarah's like, take out your hair. And I was like, okay. And it just like stays in that weird ponytail because it's so oily and sweaty. It's like perfect.
It was fabulous, right? And then what's beautiful about that as well is we got to really feel, oh, when I let my hair out, how does that feel? And you could still feel that.
Yes.
Yeah? And it's not saying, okay, great, well, I'll just leave oil in my hair for 3 days and leave that out and be, but the thing is how you felt.
Yeah.
And that's what is powerful. That's where we bring, and especially as the feminine, we bring the power back into ourselves. Yep. And we get to balance that out and find that within ourselves. This world is going to shift as we shift as the feminine. As we start to bring that balance back and really start to know, honour, cherish, reclaim our feminine energy, we're going to start to see real shifts in this world. This is not about us being powerful in a way that we think the masculine has to be powerful and meeting the masculine there. This is about really understanding our amazing, like fucking amazing feminine power. Oof.
Oh, that gives me like, that was such a weird noise that came out of my mouth, but that gives me just like goosebumps thinking about it. And another thing that I noticed like during my session, I said, oh, and people will probably relate to this, like the feeling of looking nice when you go to a wedding or an event, right? It was like, oh, well, I pulled out another dress and I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite dresses. And it was that pink and orange one had a bit going on the sleeves and it kind of cut down and it was tight here. And I was like, yeah, this feels really good. And then as I put it on, I was like, this actually doesn't feel good. There's a lot going on. And it was a dress I'd worn to a hen's party, I believe. But it was like connected to that feeling of I'll look nice when I dress up and saving things to special occasions. And you made a really good comment about saving things for special occasions. And I wanted you to share that.
Well, it's so interesting, right? It's like special occasions has us then feel less special on an everyday, and is not every day special. Is not you in your full energy every day the most specialist energy you could ever hope to feel?
Yeah.
And it's like we have this strange piece that we'll put that away for later.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
And so then that's also externally focused. And then we worry about what someone else might think, that I'm dressing up too much. Often it's that fear, it's that whole feeling of being too much.
Yeah, especially for women.
Oh my gosh. Do you know, I was reading a book the other day by Carol Gilligan. She's written some amazing books, The Human Voice, Why the Patriarchy Persists, I think it's called, A Different Voice, those kind of things. And she really dissects the culture. And she says as kids, like up until the age of 4, men and women are the same in their emotional empathy, their emotional compassion. Like we're humans. And then we learn what it is to move into having to be a man or a boy and a girl, right? And the don'ts start in. The boys, I think they start in around 4 to 7, and for girls, they start in, I think it's around 10 or 11. I might get that wrong, so let's hold that. We're okay with the fluidity of that. But the don'ts. And boys are, I don't care, because they get told in subliminally that if I care, I'll be seen too much as a sissy and I'll be seen as a girl. And already they've worked out at a very early age that boys are at a higher pecking order than girls, right, in this culture. For women and for girls, we get, I don't know. So what we do is we go into silence. We go, I don't know. Now, track and track how often I don't know comes up in your everyday language. Because even, and we picked it up a few times the other day, if you remember, you'd say, blah, 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 I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And I come back and I go, you do know. What is it? And we're taught to, and especially if we're saying something and we say something and then we want to reel backwards because we're like, have we said too much? Am I too much? Am I too much? Oh, I don't know. And so we learn to do that. We learn to do that in our clothes as well. We go, can I be too much? I don't know. Let's dampen that down.
Yeah.
Yeah? So how can I hide the part that I actually know my own power? I know who I am. Yeah? How can I really hold the fullness of me and allow myself to take up space in a world that says if I take up space, that might feel a bit dangerous. So that piece is that too muchness, that specialness. It's like, I really invite us all to take daily stock around that and where we're shrinking inside ourselves. And that's why the wowful, where'd that come from?
I love it.
The wardrobe is such a powerful.
The wowful.
It's so wowful. I've never heard that word come out of my mouth. I love it though. It's so wowful. The wardrobe is such a powerful place to embody our full energy every morning. It's an embodiment tool. It's not just something that we put on.
Yeah.
It's a self-care tool. It's a self-expression tool. It's a powerful tool to allow yourself to really step into you. And you know, the too muchness. Now, sometimes, can I go off on a tangent or break?
Please tangent away.
Okay. So one of the things that people, when you say, you know, it's authenticity is really important and be authentic to dress, I used to get the vision before wearing your words of, does that mean I'm going to wear a purple hat and red polka dot shoes? You know, it's kind of like, because we see authenticity as something different from. Yeah, so we look at it and we say, well, let's be, if I'm going to be unique, that means I'm different. And there's there's a lot of people have essences, style essences that are around unique. But what I hear out of their voice a lot is it's different. And I keep pulling them back. Different to what? Because it means that you're externally focused. Unique is around yourself. It feels unique to me. It just feels, ooh, that feels unique. Yeah, rather than that feels different. Different has to be different too.
It needs context.
It needs context, external context, yes. So bright colours is a similar thing. So a lot of people think if I want to stand out, I'll wear bright colours or brightly coloured patterns. Well, I'll take you back to a client story. She was in her 70s. She just separated from a 20-year relationship, yeah? And she said to me she was very submissive in this relationship and her partner felt very dominating to her. And she said, when we looked through her wardrobe and I asked her to pull out her favourites, to begin with, she pulled out all of these brights. And she said, I got into brights about 18 months ago. And she'd been strategizing out of this marriage for 18 months, right? And she'd started to wear all of these bright colours. Now, when she put them on, though, they were all very masculine shapes. By masculine shapes, I mean crew necks, turtlenecks, things that really cover all of our body, or very straight lines, or very classic masculine shapes like vests or side pocket slimline pants or cardigans or things, if you think about V-necks, anything with very linear lines, right? And anyway, I'll go back to that because I could go on a tangent of that. But these bright coloured pieces were all very masculine based. And once she put them on, it was a bit like you with your yellow dress. They were not connecting with her heart. And when we found her essences, they were nothing from these clothes. From memory, going back, I think there was a sophisticated, there was something around, I can't remember right now. But there was flow. There was a lot of flow in it as well. There was sophisticated, and there was another essence, which doesn't have me. It might have even been essential, actually. I think it might have been. But they were all in soft watercolours, expressed that. And she had lots of these clothes all buried away. And what we realised was this. She had gravitated towards bright colours to do the talking for her.
That's the same as that bright dress that I wore for the hens. And I was like, this is me. And I was like, oh, my God.
Exactly, to be seen, to stand out.
Yeah.
But what we do is when we ask our clothes to do the talking for us, we disconnect from our power because the narrative behind that is I'm not powerful enough to say and to be the fullness of my own energy. So let me find something that is going to do that talking for me. And the best way that we can do our talking is in our authenticity. And that's going to look different for everyone. So when we think that we're really coming up against what we think will be the most powerful, that's why we really need to find your programming and your patterning first of what that looks like and feels like.
Yeah, because it absolutely blew my mind, right? Because picking up on what you said earlier about our wardrobe not just being things that we wear and it being an embodiment, I never looked at it like that. Like my mum wasn't really into fashion. It was just kind of like you wore things for comfortability or for a purpose, right? You wouldn't just accessorize or do things or the feel of it and how does this make me feel? There was none of that. It was like, oh yeah, this is nice, or this accentuates my hips, or this doesn't make my cankles look big, or like it was really, really externally focused. So with like our session and learning all about this, it absolutely just, I keep saying blow my mind because there's no other words for it, of like the embodiment piece and allowing me to express myself through my clothes that were already in my wardrobe. So it's not like, okay, now I need to go and spend all this money on new clothes and I've got to fully refresh and revamp myself. It's like, actually, I already had these clothes because I was already almost there, right? Because they're already things that I had purchased. There was a few things that we tried on and I was like, nope. Like it was just immediate no. But it's like once you realize these essences and how your body, not only how your soul wants to come through and how it wants to express, it was like I was picking up on it, right? And we'd put on an outfit. I'm like, no, it needs this or it needs that and it needs that. And it wasn't something that I'm like, okay, I need to refer back to my book of like, what do I wear? Look for these cuts, look for these colors, look for these shapes. It was none of that. It's like my body knew.
Yes.
Which was crazy.
I love that. My body knew. Oof. That's it, right? We know in our body because you feel it. It's visceral.
Yeah. Yes.
It's so visceral. And the fact that you already had pieces in your wardrobe because something inside you knew. And it's like, people say to me, I went out, I bought this thing, it's still got a price tag because I got it back and I thought, what was I thinking? And the thing is, you weren't thinking. You put it on and in the store and you're like, oh my God. And I think that also brings me to the point of even sustainability as well.
Yes.
Right? Because when we know our style essences, we actually need less in our wardrobe because everything comes together and it comes together with such ease. And I had one woman who said she absolutely hated a wardrobe. She'd been having temper tantrums for 18 months before I worked with her. Like every day that she got dressed, she was just like wolf. And said she hated everything in her wardrobe. By the end of that session, she'd found 22 new outfits in the wardrobe she hated.
That's great, but I believe that fully. I'm like, yeah.
Now, yes, right? Because you've done it, and you get to style things in a different way, and it's like you get to connect in with your own inner stylist. And the caution I have about people working with stylists in a normal form is that it's really possible that those stylists will be overlaying their own essences onto you because it's hard not to if you're not awake to them. And if you don't know your essences, we can look amazing in so many different outfits, but do we feel amazing? Yeah? And the feel is the part that carries our power through. When we feel amazing, of course, we radiate out this extraordinary physicality as well. Like we look beautiful and owning our beauty and owning our power. It's like we've made beauty out to be such a superficial thing in life and it's so not. It's so not. It's like we just get to express the fullness of ourselves. How can that not be beautiful? It's nuts, right?
Yeah. But we get so scared of it and we get like that came up for me. I was crying during our session quite a bit actually because it brought up a lot of feelings around my own beauty and the way I express myself and my sexuality and just how comfortable I felt in my body because I'm comfortable with how I dress, but it was a lot of hiding and it was a lot of like immaturity, I guess, in my clothing as well, like my Docs and my Converse, and it was really not allowing myself to step into that powerful, full feminine essence of myself.
I'm going to say the word woman. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
This happens quite often with women as well because for a lot of women, it can feel unsafe to really be in our womanhood. And so a lot of women will stay in expressions of child and it kind of diminishes. It comes back to that, I don't know. I don't have to really stand in my full feminine womanhood power, that priestess that we are on the inside, right? That we really get to stand in that goddess, that priestess, that this is who I am. So there are so many layers. My gosh, we could talk about your session for hours, couldn't we? I just loved it. And I just want to thank you because you're such an open, beautiful soul who is so prepared to be so present and vulnerable. We laughed a lot.
We cried.
We had everything in there. And the unveiling and the unfurling of that day, it was just, I was so full.
Thank you. No, me too. It blew my mind. Come up with a new saying. But it was just because I went in, like I said, thinking that it was more about shapes and colors and, like I like my collarbones out, so we'll get them out, or we'll do my waist and this is my tan, so we'll dress for that. And it was like nothing about fabrics. It was nothing about cuts. It was nothing about these are your colors. It was nothing about, oh, well, when your hair's nice, that will look nice. Or when you've got makeup on, then this will look really put together. It was, oh my God, it was just like the most incredible experience. And I can totally see how this impacts women because I don't feel like I need to or I want to hide in my wardrobe. And like even just getting dressed today, I was like, ooh, what am I going to wear? And it felt exciting and not in a way of I've got to put on a show or I've got to look nice for something. It was just like, cool, how do I want to feel today for the podcast? How do I want to feel for my client sessions that I have this afternoon? Even sitting at working from home yesterday and I still like put on my shirt, I had like my cap on and I still dressed how I felt good, not just like cool grungy baggy tee, mockies, hair up in a bun, like let's go. And I've noticed such a huge difference in how I want to show up and how I just feel fucking alive internally. It's unreal.
So beautiful. It's so, what was the word I used before? Waterful or something?
Wowful.
Wowful. So wowful. Oh my God. It is, and it's palpable, right? You can feel it. And I can feel you when you're in your essence or not because I get to feel energy.
Yeah.
Right? And it was so flipping obvious. It was so obvious. And it's so, what I love about what you've just said is dressing should be something that we enjoy. It should be a creative endeavor that really connects us to who we are on a day-to-day basis instead of this angst and this part that taps us into insecurity, which comes from that vibration of who do I need to be for others. Yeah? We get to show up in a whole fucking self that is so full and with endless possibility if we're really prepared to hold that and stay true to ourselves.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful place for us to finish up because we could just sit here and yap for hours. If people want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram under Wearing Your Worth and my website is Wearing Your Worth as well. And yeah, I do online courses. I've got one coming up in February. I do one-on-ones and yeah, just track me down.
Yeah, track me down. You'll find her.
I do have a podcast myself as well, Wardrobe Wisdom, which I would love to have you on because
yes.
I'll do all the questioning.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much for coming and thank you so much for listening. If you have loved this episode, don't forget to share it with someone you love, rate it 5 stars, comment below or slide into the DMs and tell us what you took from it.